feeling about this wonderful deck coming to Master Duel?
You know, on one hand, I believe the deck is cancer. It's just pure cancer. It should have come to Master Duel, especially like the way that it's going to come to Master Duel. On the other hand, from seeing you playing it and hearing, you know, all your rematches and stories and everything like that, I'm excited because I'll be able to play it too. Because the Rise Heart's not here yet, so I'll definitely be picking up this deck, and I wanna beat some people with it.
I'm excited. I'm excited for you to play it too. So here's what I want to do today. So if you do want a more in-depth, if you've never like played Purrely, if you're not familiar with it, I do have a few videos. I'm going to pop them on screen right now. Definitely check these out. The first big one that you're seeing is a rulings, tips, and tricks video. That actually is going to cover what's probably going to be the second wave of support we get, as well as this first wave. And then the other one is actually going to be covering like the two main combo lines that you kind of need to know for this deck within this first wave of support. And then if you want to take it one step further even too, the deck profile that I did, while it is TCG and it's covering all three waves of support we got, it'll be a nice indicator of where the deck is ultimately going to end up. Because like I mentioned, there were waves of support in the TCG, and what we're getting in Master Duel is just the very, very first wave of support that we got in the TCG, and the deck was only kind of okay at that point. So if you are picking this up because you've heard it's a really good deck, it's arguably like possibly the best deck in TCG right now, if not one of the top three, it's not going to be that on release. I can absolutely guarantee you that this first wave of support, well, again, it is 100% playable. It suffered from some major consistency issues, but we're going to talk about it. I'm planning on playing it from day one on. And what you see on screen is kind of like the list that I'm toying with. I've got some cards that are in the side deck right now as well that we're just going to talk about as we go. But so basically the overview of Purrely is you've got your main deck Purrely, and you use these different quick play spells alongside Purrely's effect to go into these different Xyzs. From there, they all have different effects, and these quick plays get attached as material as well, and all grant them different effects. Your end goal is generally to make X Purrely Noir, which is basically a towers with a non-once per turn bounce to the bottom of the deck effect. Remarkably strong, really hard to handle. And that's kind of what you want to do when you go first with the deck. The issue that Purrely has right now, before we get the next wave of support, is getting to that point is a little bit tricky. We do lose to like a fair few amount of hand traps. Ash Blossom is a big one. Droll and Lockbird is also a big one. This is actually something that I'm considering tossing in just at one as like a designator target, but I'm not totally sure. We've got two Call by the Graves, and there are ways to mitigate Droll and Lockbird in this deck. So I'm going to run through it really quick, kind of give a very brief overview, talk about how I kind of want to play the deck, because I'm kind of two minds right now. This is like version 1 of the deck. I haven't really toyed with version 2. And then we'll talk about these extra cards that you see down here as well. Lou, you are here because you know Master Duel way better than I do. And also you're here to make sure I don't go on for a half hour.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see like how this deck is gonna do though. I think this build is pretty much like 95%, 96% there. You know, I think you hit it like right on the head, you know, with this build. So
I'm hoping so. So we've got main deck Purrely. We are getting Purrely probably the next wave of support, which is, it really, really brings the deck around. It's another main deck monster, but this is the one that you're working with mainly. Once per turn, or non once per turn, sorry. When you normal or special summon her, you activate the top 3 card of your deck, add a Purrely spell or trap from among them to your hand. So because it's not once per turn, we can normal summon, we can bring it out with 1 for 1. Something we can do is actually link it off into a relinquished anima. That's also why Link Karibo is here if you want like additional things to link off into. I never really, even in the first wave, went into both, but then you can Monster Reborn, get another effect. And then Purrely's second effect is you reveal one of these quick plays in your hand and you special summon the corresponding Xyz monster. And then you kind of go from there. All the Xyz monsters have effects that when you activate the quick plays, you can go Chain Link 2, attach them as material. They all actually do something on attachment. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into what any of these do. If you want to see that, definitely check out the other videos I mentioned. We're running the Dark World engine here because these all have a E-Telly effect, where on resolution you discard a card and special summon a Purrely from the deck. Because the discard happens on res, it's not considered a cost, so you'll actually proc all these Dark World effects. And basically these are just here because if you don't draw a great hand, or you don't really have like enough quick plays to run with, you can burn through your hand resources really fast, and these just give you a constant stream of discards to go with. The original one that I was running when I first played the deck in TCG was actually Volcanic Shell, because that had some level 1 synergy in there, but I don't know. I don't really think it's like super worth it over running these, which just constantly reload. We've got a little bit of a hand trap suite going on here, just standard Ash and Maxi. Again, all the quick plays, you want to absolutely be on 3 of these. You just need a critical mass of Purrely cards to excavate off Purrely. My friend Purrely, this is like the primary searcher. This has already been confirmed to be a UR. You're absolutely going to want 3 of these for sure. It lets you reveal 3 Purrely cards from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to get. You can just reveal, like, if you need a specific quick play, reveal 3 of that quick play. If you want a normal summon Purrely, you just reveal 3 Purrely. There's nothing stopping you from revealing 3 of the same card. Just a heads up, by the way, this is like the most important quick play, especially at this point in the deck's lifespan. It lets you get to this card, which lets you go into Purrely Noir more consistently than the other ones, because this lets you actually attach any spell or trap from the graveyard to it as a material, so super helpful. This got limited in the TCG later on. We had already had the second wave of support, so it wasn't too tragic. It just kind of like changed how you have to play the deck a little bit. And then the third wave of support actually, I think, kind of made this being limited almost irrelevant. So I'd still like having 3 though. The field spell is pretty solid. It gives you targeting protection the turn your Purrelys are special summoned, and it lets you attach a material from your deck or graveyard, one of the quick plays, to a Purrely XCs during the end phase. I'm on 2 of them in here. You could arguably run 3. I run 1 in the TCG, but I'm actually thinking of bumping it up to 2. The only reason I'm not on 3 right now is it doesn't really do anything to start your combos. It's just like good to have additionally. I would maybe consider going up to 3 though, because we don't have the easy access to it that Purrely guarantees. But again, this is kind of like my day one. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to pan out. It's been a very long time since I played Purrely in this form as well. So Cross-out Designator, this is just a little bit of bonus protection because the normal summon Purrely play is pretty fragile. Called by the Grave, again, for Ash, for Effect Veil, or for Droll. Monster Reborn and 1-for-1, we kind of covered this already, like Purrely's not once per turn, so as many times as you can summon her, link her off, Monster Reborn. I was even trying, what is it, World Legacy. I was actually even trying World Legacy Succession out early in the TCG with Link Karibo, so that you just had an additional way to like link off Purrely and then special summon it back, basically just like a special Monster Reborn. But that always felt like a little bit like one too many things going on, and just kind of trying to streamline the deck a little bit more. Triple Tactics Talents, just overall a really good card. If you don't necessarily need to draw additional cards, which can come up, like if you've got your Dark World stuff in rotation, looking at your opponent's hand after they hand trap you is always great. But this is actually one of the decks, especially in this stage of its life, that I did kind of use the draw 2 effect pretty often. Book of Moon's interesting. I never really ran this in the TCG for the deck, but it does have some really cool applications. Again, obviously, your opponent imperms a Purrely. You can Book of Moon it. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing because you'll at least get the search off. And if they imperm the Purrely anyway, it's not like you can use the effect to overlay with it. The only thing that you'd lose out by Book of Mooning a Purrely is like you can't go into like Sylvan Princess Sprite, Ensemble Blue Robin, or any of your extra deck stuff, but it's also really nice. There's a really fun interaction. So Purrely Noir, I really want to talk about this here because I've never mentioned it in another video because I've never run Book of Moon. Purrely Noir has protection from activated effects if it's got 5 or more materials on it. However, once you drop below that 5 or more material threshold, your opponent can imperm, Dark Ruin, or more anything to her. If you've got, let's say, like 4 material, and your opponent's already Dark Ruin or more her, and you've got Book of Moon, you can actually activate the effect twice in one chain, target 2 separate cards, and then on chain link 3, Book of Moon her, so that she'll flip face down, and then the 2 effects will resolve, even though she was previously negated on field. So that's just like a really cool interaction with Book of Moon. Plus, Book of Moon, it's just a really good modular go first or go second card in general. So trying it out in here, and then that might actually carry over into TCG. Imperm, just good generic hand trap. Purrely Yeep, So this one is kind of a weird one. I played it one in the TCG because we have a searcher for this now, and you could also search it with Purrely if you opened everything else. It really comes into play much more when we get Sleepy Memory, which is probably going to be in the next wave of support. But I'm going to try out 2 here. It just gives you some like really interesting options. It lets you rank up a 2 into a 7 or a 7 back down into a 2. So there's kind of a lot you can do with it, especially since these all have like soft once per turn effects on them. Or it lets you dodge, like if you use Purrely Beauty, for example, has a targeted negate on her. So if you use the effect and your opponent goes to like negate your negation, you can always like use Purrely Leap or something to dodge it. The same trick with Book of Moon actually works with X Purrely Noir as well. If your opponent negates X Purrely Noir and then you fire off the effect a bunch of times and then Purrely Leap on Chainlink 3, because she's not on the field anymore, she's not considered negated, it'll resolve. So again, I'm trying out 2 of this in here. I'll see how it goes. I'll also, by the way, I'm definitely going to do like a more in-depth deck profile on this once I kind of get some time to like play around with it in the Master Duel environment. So that'll be a lot of fun. Extra deck, 2 copies of Purrely Plump. Again, this is like the most important one. I wouldn't really go into 3 though. It just seems a little bit excessive, but very, very important for getting into X Purrely Noir, which is kind of like when you go first, the main thing that you need to be doing with this deck. Purrely Beauty, this is kind of like the backup plan. Again, it's a walking copy of Infinite Impermanence. Purrely Happiness, so something I am considering with this deck is actually blinding second with it. That's what I've been doing in the TCG to like a great amount of success, and part of the reason behind that is Purrely Happiness can OTK by itself. And this actually has gotten a lot easier with Purrely Delicious Memory at 3 in here. The OTK was a lot more consistent because you have 3 copies of both of the things that you need to do it. Again, definitely check out the videos I showed earlier because they have how you do the OTK with this card, but it's really, really cool. And it is kind of like an argument for going second with this deck as well. I'm just going to skip ahead. Like, this deck makes Double Azaeus like no other deck. It's so easy to do. And because this deck is like 9 copies of E-Telly, it is kind of a game plan that comes up sometimes where it's just like, well, let me just chew through as much interaction as possible. And then once my opponent's down to kind of like nothing else left, you just make a Double Azaeus, and it's pretty easy to get a 2-mat Double Azaeus in this deck, fire one off, and then just kind of like put them on top deck mode. So Sylvan Princess Sprite, it's just if you want to gamble for an additional spell or trap, we're running only 13 monsters total, and then obviously 2 of those will be out of the deck if you're going into Princess Sprite, so like 11 monsters to however many spells or trap this is, 28 it looks like. So pretty good odds of flipping something. Lyreless Ensemble Blue Robin. So this was only an early include in this deck. I actually have taken it out since then, but just good to go into, especially if you're burning through the Dark World stuff. You'll end up with additional Purrelys because you have to discard to summon them, and you can use those 2 additional Purrelys just to make a nice little Ensemble Blue Robin. It gives you 2 extra pieces of interaction if you either don't get to Noir, you just have Purrely Beauty, or you get to Noir and just want to like hold those interactions and use these first. Always good to just like fire these off immediately because you're only gonna have 1,000 attack on her, so your opponent can just normal summon and run over her. Relinquished Anima, again, we kind of covered. Good Link 1 in general. Lingaribo, this is specifically for Nightmare Corruptor Ibly. It comes up once in a while on Master Duel, but it's just kind of a thing where it's like, we've got the space for it, so I might as well toss it in. You just link off the Ibly and get to go to town. Sky Striker Ace Azalea. So this is actually really fun. We never had this in the earliest stages of Purrely. We got this way later on, but it's just a really solid generic Link 2. The only other card I would consider over her is Protector of the Agent's Moon. And the only real difference between these 2 cards is Azalea is like has multiple repeated uses on her. You can, always use the attack effect. Protector of the Agent Moon, generally if you make this, you're going to immediately tribute it off to pop something. This can take out Skill Drain because it tributes itself for cost, whereas this cannot. So something to kind of consider. You could theoretically run both. Like, you could knock one of these 2 Purrely Beauties or one of these 2 Purrely Happinesses down to 1. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. Sylvan Princess Sprite, again, you could like take that out because it's more of a gamble card than anything else. I will say also though, Sylvan Princess Sprite is nice because it's an Xyz with like a pretty decently high attack that can survive potentially ramming into something. or if your opponent has something in attack with low attack, you can just take it out and then make a Zeus with it. So something to consider there. And then we already covered double Isaias. This deck just makes it really easy. So a few cards that I do want to kind of cover and mention before we close out this video are Link Karibo. Again, this is like purely for, if purely, if you want to do the thing where you link off Purrely and just keep bringing it back with different cards to get more searches. Otherwise, I wouldn't really bother with Link Karibo. Santa Claus is a really nice kaiju for this deck, and if this deck really does pick up a lot, kaijus are kind of, especially right now, because we don't have Sleepy Memory, kaijus are a really great answer to Purrely Noir. Granted, if they have like the field spell and the continuous spell up, they will get a ton of recovery if you kaiju their Purrely Noir. But kaijus at the moment are a solid answer, just because as soon as the main phase starts, you clear it off the field. Santa Claus is especially good for this deck though, because it summons in defense mode, so again, just lining you up to easily make a double Isaias. Droll and Lockbird is really, really strong against this deck. As I mentioned, we can kind of like play around it a little bit. If you draw the right quick play, like specifically Purrely Pretty Memory, you can fire off in the draw phase. These two need some sort of field presence. This can be anything on the field. There needs to specifically be a monster on the field for you to activate it. But if you do as much as you can in the draw phase, it plays around Droll. Nibiru is just generally a good card. It's also especially good in this for the same reason Santa Claus is. You can drop the token in defense mode. It gets better with Sleepy Memory too, because even if you give them like a huge token, Sleepy Memory will stop you from taking damage from that first attack. So it just gives you something to attack into to make a Zeus. And again, just generically strong card. These two are cards I want to mention, not even specifically just for this deck, but more so when like the next wave of support does come out and this deck is like everywhere. These are both outs to Purrely Noir. So Purrely Noir, again, has protection from activated effects, and that's like pretty blanketly strong. But Herald of the Abyss actually bypasses the protection because it's causing a player to take an action. And Xyz's Encore also is the same thing. You target the monster, like Purrely Noir can be targeted, but then you're causing your opponent to do said action. So it's another potential out to this. This one's especially good though once you get Sleepy Memory, because it can actually take this out in the draw phase before your opponent has a chance to draw a ton of cards off Sleepy Memory. Although Xyz's Encore is a little iffy though, because Purrely Yeep exists, and generally speaking, a lot of times the play is go into your opponent's turn with one of the smaller Purrelys with like 2 or 3 Sleepy Memories under it, draw 2, and then fire off Purrely Yeep and go into this. So you're not going to stop everything with Xyz's Encore, and it does let them special summon a Purrely, which is never fun. And then the last two I just have here because, especially once we get Triple Tactics Thrust, I know I keep saying whenever we get that card nonstop for like everything in Master Duel, but these get a lot better, and it makes playing this deck as a go second option a lot more viable. I talk more about why we play it going second in the deck profile. Again, if you want to check that out, it's got a lot of support in it that we don't have in Master Duel yet. But besides that, it's just a good primer on a lot of the things this deck can do, and kind of the argument for why you would consider playing this deck going second. Anyway, closing this out, I do think this deck is going to pick up really, really heavily once the next wave of support comes out. Might as well pick up the core now if you're thinking of playing it. Get used to some of the very basic lines, because while a lot of them are going to change once we get the new support, some of them are going to be the same, and you should know how to do all the basic stuff as well. Again, check out all the videos that I referenced in this for much more in-depth explanations of everything. And yeah, Lou, have any closing words to say about this one?
Keep in mind, right, like I'm sure that if you are playing Master Duel actively, then you're probably aware of like the Cashera stuff, right? Unfortunately, I guess, we only have one Zeus, right? So like, you got to be very careful triggering Unicorn, or like, you know, if they get to my hacker, you lose Zeus, then you might have to take another route, you know, when you do the trap and you get Noir out.
Yeah. And I mean, that is oh, sorry.
I was going to say, what do you recommend players do with that, right? Because you don't want to lose your Noir and then lose all the materials and all that.
No, for sure. And I mean, that is kind of an argument for like why I'm thinking about maining Nibiru at this stage, is specifically because even though Kashru is not at full power, like you said, like Unicorn can snipe out the singular copy of Double Isaias, which like not tragic, but it kind of is at this early stage of the deck where like your Noir access isn't as guaranteed.
Right.
And I mean, Mind Hacker again. Mind Hacker just snipes out a second copy of anything. If your opponent really wants to mess with you, they could actually just snipe out both the Noirs and make you try to get to a Zeus through a Kashtira board. So Nibiru is like a good thing to consider, because to get to even Mind Hacker, they have to play into Nibiru. We're on the triple Imperms, we're on the triple Ash as well, we're on the triple Maxi, but... And this deck is kind of like optimized to try to go first, but... Again, like I said, this is like my idea for a list with absolutely zero testing. The Dark World stuff may actually not even pan out. It gets a lot better when you have more Purrelys to summon, but the other issue is, like, you only have 3 Purrelys, so summon 1 Purrely with 1, summon 2 Purrely with 2, summon 3 Purrely with 3. You kind of have to, like, skip the last snow and go straight to Brow to get benefits from it, because these can only summon from the deck. So, like, once these are in the graveyard, you can't resummon them with this unless you have Purrely Yeep in the graveyard to, like, shuffle them back in. So this actually, even while we're talking about it, I might just take the Dark World stuff out. You can also do the Crystal Beast engine, where you just run, I'll just show that really quick. You run 1 Cobalt Eagle, that's your search target. And then you run 3 copies of Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. Rainbow Bridge of Salvation, you discard it, and then for any of these, then you can banish it and add a Crystal Beast and a field spell from your deck to your hand. So it's good access to the field spell. It gives you something additional to discard. It's, again, something else that you can, like, consider trying for this, like, early stage of the deck. Or you can just run more hand traps, too, and, like, which is kind of... I might actually do that, now that we're talking about it, and now that you brought up... See, that's why I'm glad you're here. You know Master Duel better than I do.
Yeah, maybe some effect veilers and stuff like that. You know, for that Kashtira lineup. Also, Tears is still around, right? Tears is another deck that could be an issue. We don't have, with the Purrely deck, we don't have a lot of ways to stop them from fusion summoning too much. We can stop Kikalos, and like that's pretty good.
So something else, I mean, so this gets a little tricky because we don't have a side deck. If we had a side deck, this would be much cooler, but I used the side deck Dimension Shifter in Purrely, especially because right now you don't really need your quick plays in the graveyard as desperately as you do once we get Purrely. Because Purrely activates and attaches from the graveyard where Purrely does from hand. So you used to be able to actually get away with running Dimension Shifter in here. And you technically still could in TCG. It's just not conducive to good times for anyone. I'm going to throw 1 Droll in here too, just partly for a cross-side target, partly because it's good.
And then my last thing I'm going to ask you, right? Because we need people to know. Because right now the strongest deck right now, it is Dragon Link. You know, pretty soon, like, it'll be Kashtira once we get our ISR and stuff, and then Purrely once they get their stuff, they're gonna be the top dogs.
Yeah.
But right now, what is the best route for one? Obviously, like, not letting them get to Borderland is the best way to do it. But what if, you know, you break and then they get to Borderland? What is your best route to get rid of them? You know, obviously shoes, but is there any other way of us getting rid of Borderland?
I mean, part of what this deck does well is run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hand traps pretty solidly. So, like, the odds of missing a relevant hand trap are pretty low. But even if you do, like, if you miss all your hand traps, then, like, looking at everything else in here, you're kind of on, like, mostly all gas. So this deck just excels at kind of, like, punching through interactions. And again, like, worst case scenario, you punch through a ton of interactions and you make a double Azais. And that's really is, like, going second. The main backup plan for this deck is just make this double Azais after you've chewed through as much as possible. This does get easier as well once we get 3 additional main deck Purrelys. It makes going into, like, generic rank 1s easier. But also, too, like, these are not hard once per turn. So, like, you summon Purrely, you go to XC, summon, they negate it. You summon another Purrely, you go to XC, summon, they negate it. You summon another Purrely, do they still have it? If they negate that XC summon attempt via the effect, that's fine. You go into, like, Princess Sprite or something, ram into something, and hope for the best. That's also, I mean, part of why we're running Book of Moon. Flip something big and attack. Obviously not Borderline because it's a link, but, you know, like, if they summon Rocket Tracer and attack or something, flip it face down, ram into it, make a Zeus. That's really, like, the big backup plan of this deck, though.
Awesome. No, that sounds perfect. It looks great. I think you did a really good job putting that thing together.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
I'm
excited to
very
see how it
confident in
goes.
this. Yeah, no, me too. I honestly want to see like what people come up with, and like if people do run this, I really want to hear their feedback. And just to let everybody know, I have zero input on this deck. This is all Rob. Uh, but I also want to say, you guys are welcome because I've been pushing Keasbey to get these Master Duel videos out.
You
You
truly,
guys are
truly have.
welcome, all you Master Duel players. Yeah,
I mean,
I
yeah,
bullet him every day.
after that vote of confidence, I am really just going to mention that this is like not even day zero. This is like my day -1 build. I think it'll work. I think there's definitely some improvements that I'm going to have to make, like, once I bring this out into the wild in Master Duel. I'm much more familiar with, like, TCG formats, so trying to build towards, like, a Master Duel format, a version of a deck that I haven't played for, like, months and months and months now has been a little bit weird, but... And especially, too, like, I didn't really want to dive too deep into building it yet because I didn't know what version of the support we were getting. Like, I didn't know if they were going to kind of do, like, what they did with Kostier, where they mix and matched the first and second wave of support, or if they just did, like, the Geralman thing, where they dropped all of the support at once. But
Right.
I'm feeling pretty confident in this list being able to at least, like, perform as well as the first version equivalent of it did in the TCG. Like, again, full disclosure, full honesty, this deck did have problems in the TCG on release. It 100% did. The consistency was just rough. I don't know how much Max C is really going to affect how consistent this deck is, but it's definitely something we never had. So I think it will be very helpful in at least just getting access to quick plays, getting more cards in hand that you can discard. Like I said, too, I'll just pull them up one more time. You know, if you do want to run a little bit of a Dark World engine, you could do Snow and Brow. Snow just searches another Snow, searches another Snow, searches Brow. Brow gives you a draw. So obviously, again, you're discarding a lot. It gives you that nice little hand recharge going down the line. But anyway, Lou, if you've got nothing else...
No, this is beautiful right here. Yeah, and I agree. I think I remember when before you got the second supporter wave, you used to do the Dark World stuff, and some people were doing the what is it
The Crystal Beast engine, yeah.
Crystal Beast stuff engine, right? And it did surprise me whenever you did drop it, and then you can still pull off like the deck is really good. And then again, it could be just Keasbey's like protagonist powers, or his win rate is like 90% with this deck. But it's kind of insane how much stuff you do discard, but like how far the cards will get you, because like you are discarding stuff, but then again, you are attaching those cards too, right? Like as materials, so like you're not really losing advantage.
No, yeah, for sure. This deck can potentially do a lot with a little, but it can also do a little with a lot, especially that the stage it's at right now. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to see how it performs. It'll be a nice little time machine going back to before this deck was tier 1.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it, but if y'all enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for even more, and I will catch y'all later.
Peace, guys.